So let's have a look at the campaign settings, the calling behaviour that we can set up to our data that we've already uploaded. Okay, so you can run multiple campaigns simultaneously. You would give it a name and a description pertaining to the type of campaign that you're running. I'm just going to pick out the important settings here, as there's so many it would just take forever to run through the lot. So we can screen pop a web-based, could be a CRM for example, or a customer survey, anything that's web-based. We could screen pop as the call comes through, or by the agent manually pressing a web form button or web form 2 button. We can also send variables. So if, for example, you wanted to screen pop a particular client record in a CRM based on telephone number or any value, as long as it's in the dialer database, we could basically send that in the URL and therefore screen pop the appropriate screen. We can have fronters and closers, so you might have some lower skilled guys on the front line who are getting bites of interest and then passing it through to a more higher skilled member of staff in the background. So you can set up what we call closer groups, which would be a pool of resource to transfer through to, which the dialer isn't making automated outbound calls on behalf of. We've got the allow emails option here, so that your agents can deal with inbound emails in exactly the same way as they can deal with phone calls. A campaign could be outbound only, it could be inbound only, or it can be blended. And what I mean by that is we're going to be presenting a telephone number when dialing out through this campaign. If people see that missed call on their phone and they call back in, if you want those calls to route back through to those same outbound call agents, then that's a blended campaign, so we need to have that enabled. We can choose the order in which we dial our data. So at the moment we're calling our data from the top down. If you're adding data regularly to an existing list ID, then it gets added to the bottom, so you'd probably want to change that list order to up. But you can also do useful things like down count. So let's say, for example, you were working some old data that's all been dialed before. It's got a count against each lead, so it knows exactly how many times each lead has been dialed. Setting it to down count will call the leads with the lowest count first and work its way up to the highest. We can do list mixing, so if you had 2 or more lists active within this campaign, then you could prioritize one over another. For example, set up an 80-20 list mix. And we can do lead filtering. So if, for example, you just wanted to call data in a specific postcode, and you had the postcode in the dialer database, then you could set up a filter based on leads only containing specific letters in a certain postcode field, or any other field for that matter. You can limit the amount of times each lead is dialed. So if you called a lead 20 times and no one's answered, the chances are they're not going to answer on the 21st time either, and what you're effectively then doing is just wasting agent time. So we can limit the amount of times each lead is dialed. A campaign can be working in a few different modes. So you could have a manual campaign, which is effectively click to dial, so the agent is dictating the pace of the dialing. You could use a ratio mode, whereby it's a pause and resume automated campaign, but you're manually choosing the ratio which you dial at. Or you can use a predictive mode, so you can use adapt, hard limit, tapered or average, which are all variations of predictive dialing, where it's using an adaptive algorithm to calculate that ratio for you automatically. Or you can just have an inbound campaign, which allows you to make manual outbound calls. So this is the ratio at which it dials at. So dialing it to a level of 1 would make 1 concurrent call for every agent logged in. Obviously, dialing at a level of 2, if you had 2 agents logged in, would make 4 concurrent calls, etc. Available only tally means it's only going to dial at that dial level on behalf of agents who are available. So they're logged in, they're not in a call already, and they're not paused. And if you've got a campaign where you're running sort of 20 plus agents, then you're probably going to want to use these 2 settings here, which just allow you to vary that dial level based on the number of agents who are logged in already, just so that you're not dropping lots of calls right at the beginning and ends of sessions when the first agents or the last agents are logging in or out. You can limit the drop percentage limit if you're Ofcom compliant and paranoid about breaking Ofcom regulations. Then you can set it to adapt hard limit, and then as soon as it hits that drop percentage limit setting there, which is the Ofcom 3%, it will crank the pace of the dialing right down to ensure that you can't go any further through that limit. And then obviously, as your number of calls increases and your drop percentage rate decreases, it will then start to crank up the pace of the dialing again. We can choose, so the dialer's got someone on the phone, it needs to put it through to an agent. Which agent does it put it through to? Typically you're going to put the longest wait time or who's taken the fewest calls, but you can also rank the agents. So let's say that you have one agent who's particularly effective and you want to make sure they utilise as much as possible. You can rank that agent higher than the others, and it'll always put it through to the highest available campaign ranking agent. We can choose how long we ring each phone number for before we deem it a no answer and move on to the next one. We can select the phone number that we're going to present when we're dialing out through this campaign. We've also got a feature whereby we can present a different phone number based on the area code that we're dialing. So the feedback I get is that if you're presenting a local number, the pickup rates tend to be a lot better. So you can buy a pool of numbers from us with various different city or area codes, and then you can set up rules based on the area code that you're dialing. So for example, if I was dialing a Liverpool number and I'd purchased a Liverpool number, then I could say, when dialing all numbers beginning 0151, please present 0151, whatever the number that we purchased is. Okay. The dialer's got integrated call recording, and it can be switched off, it can be on demand, it can have all calls recorded but with the agents having the ability to stop the recording, or you can have them all forced where the agents can't disable the recording. You've got basic scripting on here, so we could say get call launch script and it would screen pop the scripts that we've selected in here, and you can create the script builder here. If we were using a data capture form that we'd created, we'd say get call launch form. If we were using an external web-based app like a CRM for example, we'd say get call launch web form, and then it would screen pop whatever's in our web form setting here, or web form 2 setting. And we can pre-record an answer machine message. So you could pre-record a generic answer machine message, and then instead of just hanging up that call to an answer machine, you could leave that generic message without the agents having to waste their time doing it every time. You can set up transfer conf boxes, speed dial buttons effectively. So if you have to regularly transfer through to a specific number, you can set it up here, and then it'll be set up in the agent interface when they click on the transfer conf button as an option to press instantly. We can use scheduled callbacks, so two types of callbacks with this dialer: any agent callbacks or agent specific callbacks. Any agent callbacks will basically get routed through to however you've routed the next agent call setting at the time and date of that live callback trigger time. Or if it's an agent specific callback, then at the time and date of that callback going live, the agents will get a alert on their interface, and it's set to blink here so they'll know it's a callback, and then they can pause their session, click on that link, read up on any notes, and then choose to dial or skip it. We can introduce a wrap-up time after each call. So the way that would work is the agent hangs up the call, dispositions the call, and then as soon as they submit the disposition code, the wrap-up countdown timer would start. We can also limit the amount of time that an agent is in dead call. So a dead call is when the other person hangs up but the agent doesn't. So you could, for example, impose a limit there of 5 seconds, and then so if the agent hasn't hung up within 5 seconds of the other person hanging up, then it would basically put that agent into pause and disposition that call as a DCMX. You can do the same thing with the a disposition screen, so you can limit the amount of time the agents have to disposition a call, and you can limit the amount of time they can pause their session for as well. The dialer's got DNC lists. DNC stands for Do Not Call. You can either use one that's specific to this campaign, or one that's server-wide, or both. So basically, when the agent dispositions a call as a DNC, it would then get added to both lists, and therefore that number wouldn't be able to be dialed again on system-wide on any campaign. We can enforce and set up agent pause codes here. I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. We can give the agents the ability to alter customer data or the customer phone number or not. And we can tweak the agent interface here to make it informative or dumb it right down, depending on how you want to run your campaign. So for example, we can allow agents to see calls in the queue and grab specific calls from the queue, or we can just hide it from them. And we can also monitor an agent session live, and you can either let them know that you're doing that, or you can disable the warning as it currently is there. So getting back to lead recycling, when you upload a lead for the first time, it's automatically given a status of new. When that lead's been called once, it will have a different status. Now that might be something that the dialer has given it automatically, like a no answer auto dial, or it might be something that the agent has given it, like a sale or not interested. So some of those leads you're going to want to recycle, and others you won't. So there's two ways of recycling leads. One is you can automatically reset the list. So as soon as you reset the list, any leads with any of these dialable statuses here will become dialable again. Okay, so that's the recommended way of recycling leads. But in addition to that, you might want to set up additional rules. Okay, so if we go into lead recycling here, we've got an additional rule set up for B. So status B is busy, so that's an engaged tone. So that would suggest that there's someone in, and you're probably going to want to try calling that person back quite quickly. So we've set up a separate rule here to delay for 600 seconds. So every 10 minutes it's going to reattempt busies for 10 attempts. Okay, so you can create your own statuses, and you can create your own recycling rules on those statuses. We set up our pause codes here, so here's some typical pause codes that you need to use. And if you're paying your agents by the hour and you wanted to use the dialer as a timesheet effectively, then you can say yes, no or half as to paying them for certain types of breaks. We can set up our agent hotkeys here. So these are quick function buttons allowing the agents to just press numbers on their keypad to disposition or hang up and disposition their calls accordingly.